All right, so the countdown is on and we are live streaming on YouTube today. So today we're going to be touching base on igniting engagement strategies for motivating employees. And so this is week 1 of our 5-week series, and we're super excited to be able to touch on some of the scientific areas that speak to motivation in the workforce and also help managers perform and get proven results. So I'll share a little bit about us in a minute, but let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining. So I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Dr. Myra Austin. I'm the CEO and founder of Management Cues, and my background has really been in management, leadership, and operations. And so I adore operating in that space and getting to know managers and really seeing them not only succeed, but enjoy the work that they do. And so our company has been able to provide scientifically proven results through our methods and our training methodology. And I'm excited to share bits and pieces of that with you guys through this webinar series. All right, so here we go. So our company is Management Cues, and we specialize in unique type of training. We tie in neuroscience components. We're proven to work, scientifically proven to work. We impact managers' cognitive states as they're learning, which means that we're able to influence positively what they're actually experiencing through training. And so they end up retaining a large percentage of what they're learning and then are able to go and apply it in the workforce in real time, in real life. And so super exciting things we're doing with our science-backed approach. We're backed by our partners at Neuron, which do all of our neuroscience and neuroengineering testing with us and for us. All right, here we go. So today we are going to take a bite-sized look at the fundamentals, just getting started with motivation. And I always like to start with fundamentals. I think it's where we should all start to have an even ground and an equitable opportunity to learn and then apply. So we're going to talk about understanding employee motivation first. And then we're going to do a topic breakdown. We'll go through some takeaways and we'll share some resources, and then we'll close it out. Each week, we'll just share 30 minutes together. So if you want to join us each week on Fridays at 12 Pacific Standard Time, it's a bite-size, great takeaway that you can get from that time with me. All right, so let's go get into it. So introduction. So managers play a key role in driving workforce motivation. So for me, what's really important when connecting with leaders and managers is that understanding that we impact the entire human being in front of us. And there's science behind it. There's a method to the madness. And understanding employees' needs help managers inspire higher quality of work and productivity, which is ultimately the role that we play. Our role as managers, the whole purpose and function of our role as managers is to increase productivity, is to execute effectively, is to keep the team connected and in sync. And so those things are really important. And in order to do that well, you have to really understand what makes up motivation in people. So by promoting motivation, managers increase their influence in the workforce. So when we're talking about influence, we're really starting to step into leadership and a connection between ourselves and our employees that supersedes the role or function and makes it something more, right? It creates impact. So we're going to start with the science because we've had such a blast diving into the science behind what managers do and what leadership does and what our managers are experiencing in the workforce and in training. So we're going to start with dopamine. So if you haven't heard of dopamine, it's often called the pleasure chemical. It's been coined that, right? It's not the scientific term, but it's been coined that. And it plays a key role in motivation. It can generate both positive and negative drives. So it can create both positive and negative pushes for people who are, experiencing high levels of dopamine. High dopamine levels in specific areas of the brain can inspire employees to work hard in pursuit of rewards or alternatively lead them to avoid certain tasks. So, as a manager, that's critical because we've all had what we would maybe consider good employees and bad employees. And maybe it's a dopamine fix, right? Maybe it's because there's something going on in their brain that is calling them to either accept, push, and work harder or reject it and avoid it because of something that they're actually experiencing versus just thinking of it as a bad attitude, right? Which tends to be the case. So, neuroscience research has confirmed that dopamine motivates us either toward or away from actions depending on how it is activated. So, to me, that is the most important sentence on this slide because it is managers who activate these interactions. It is us. We are the activators. And so, if we're not aware or consider the effects of dopamine, for example, in an interaction, we're less likely to use that to our advantage to get the outcome that we want. The next one is oxytocin. So this one to me is one that I don't hear as much about. And so I'm really curious about it, which maybe in a future webinar, we'll bring our neuroengineer to speak to it a little bit. But oxytocin is often called the trust hormone or the bonding hormone. And it plays a significant role in enhancing trust, social bonding, and motivation in workplace environments. So think about that. There's a chemical in our brain that triggers when we're bonding, when we're developing trust. And a leader who has followers has trust with those people, right? And so that's part of the interesting aspect of this is that there are components to how we behave, how we think, how we feel that definitely influence how much we engage and hence are motivated. So boosting motivation. So here's when it becomes tactical, right? We take the science and what we know of people, and then we turn it into tactics that guarantee outcomes. At least at Management Cues, we've been able to master that really well, which is why we have the outcomes that we have. So in enhancing positive reinforcement, oxytocin reinforces positive social behaviors, right? So positive behaviors are reinforced by oxytocin. When an employee feels trust and that they are valued, it motivates them to perform well. And that's what we want ultimately, right? We want employees to perform well. That's part of us executing our role effectively. Encouraging pro-social behavior. Oxytocin promotes behaviors like empathy and generosity, right? So it allows people to be more empathetic, to want to be generous with each other, with their manager, with their teams. These behaviors contribute to supportive and collaborative work culture. So a cohesive team that doesn't complain, that doesn't point fingers, that collectively holds each other up is a team that's going to make an impact. And is a team that's going to also be creative and innovative because of the environment and the experiences that they're having. Increased job satisfaction. So increased job satisfaction is really important. And in a lot of the reading that I see, it's a lot of the times we think that it's only coming from a financial reward, right? The pay, the salary. And while that plays a component because we have bills to pay and we have needs to satisfy, our brain is saying something different. The neuroscience behind job satisfaction and the organizational behavior research says that job satisfaction is about a lot more than that. And it works different for everybody, but the sense of trust and connectedness that oxytocin creates can lead to a higher job satisfaction. So that goes back to some of the things we've just shared, which we're talking about positive behaviors, positive experiences, trust, connectedness. That has a role to play in job satisfaction as well. And you can be paid the most you've ever been paid and still be miserable and hate the job. So, intrinsic motivation theory by Daniel Pink. So, if you haven't heard of Daniel Pink, definitely Google him, do some reading around him. So, his theory speaks to three vital elements, and those elements are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And the one that calls to me the most is always purpose, right? Do people know what they want to get out of the interaction? Do people can they define it? Can we as managers define success and help people build purpose? So the intrinsic motivation theory that Daniel Pink introduced speaks largely to meeting internal drivers as a way to encourage employees to perform better, right? So it's coming from inside, it's intrinsic, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Employees want to grow and develop themselves psychologically according to this theory, right? Which means that even if on the surface it looks like we have a reluctant employee, or it looks like we have an employee who does not care, or it feels like the employee is rejecting us, having a fundamental understanding that everybody wants better, everybody wants to succeed, everybody wants to be acknowledged, rewarded, all these positive things, but they may not be able to speak to it, to exhibit it. Maybe they don't understand the opportunity, right? There's so many reasons. It's important to note that if you go into the relationship, into the interactions with employees thinking that they, have a disposition of growth, we interact differently as managers. We think about things differently. We respond to things in a different way. So in this quick, fun visual, we separated intrinsic motivation from extrinsic motivation. And the reason we did this is because people are different. They're motivated by different things. This is true. And I think it's important for managers to make a distinction so that they start to identify who their population is made up of and how to get motivation to be triggered with through their differences. So intrinsic motivation speaks to purpose, to enjoyment, and it comes from within. It's something that they're feeling, their brain is thinking about it, right? There's all these chemicals that are interacting. Extrinsic motivation is benefits driven. It's usually tied to material rewards, and it comes from outward sources, right? Outward type of validation versus an inside feeling. Practical tools for managers. So managers need practical, tactical tools that they can pull some of this knowledge out and use it to increase and enhance performance in a simple way, right? Not every manager is going to go out into the workforce and become a scientist around these areas, right? Or a subject matter expert. So here's some practical tools to think about. Empathy and active listening. Neuroscience shows that feeling heard releases oxytocin, building trust and motivation. So every time a manager pauses, sits down, has a cup of coffee, right, slows down, and really listens to an employee, oxytocin is released. So think about that and tie it back to what we talked about at the beginning of this webinar. Autonomy, supportive management. So giving people authority, responsibility makes them feel good. Giving employees choice and voice to enhance engagement, right? So those feelings that are created through this avenue, managers can tap into immediately. Personalized development plans. So I'm a huge fan of development plans, but development plans that actually are proven to work, which at Management Cues, we have a template that we follow that ties into not only the individual goals of the employee, but to the organizational goals of the company, which automatically creates a bridge for managers to manage off of and align across these different groups. So check it out if you haven't. It's on our website. But development plans are individualized learning paths, enhancing skill and confidence for growth. So it's customized to them. That's what makes it feel good. It's relating to what they want to achieve, but should have a component that aligns with their success in the organization that they're in, right? Because otherwise, you potentially have an avenue to lose talent if it's not all connected. All right, let's see here. So, organizational approaches to motivation. So, these are some approaches that are helpful for the organization. So, these are great approaches to talk about with your HR leaders, to talk about with the decision makers in the company. This is looking at how do we use motivation as an organizational approach or strategy. So, job enrichment, that's crafting roles that offer challenge, growth, and purpose to stimulate motivation. So, role design is important with this one. As we're designing job descriptions and roles and adding and growing our teams, we have to think about what does challenge, what does growth in this role look like? Because if we don't, we're not succession planning and we're ultimately shooting ourselves in the foot with any talent that comes through the door. Goal setting theory. So I'm an operations leader, so big fan of goal setting, but I've seen it done wrong many, many times. So goal setting on its own is not enough. Using SMART goals is not enough to motivate people. You want to discuss the impact of the specific goals. You want to make sure the goals are challenging and are actually creating some sort of impact or include feedback from your team members as to whether it aligns with the role, the function, and ultimately the organizational goal. So you have to connect those things. And then feedback systems. So constructive feedback, you'll likely hear about in our series, and we'll probably have one of our neuroscience partners come in and speak to it. But constructive feedback on its own has a neuroscience component that's really, really significant as to how we learn. So, how frequent constructive feedback fuels motivation through continuous learning and skill development. Constructive feedback executed the right way gives people value and gives them a path. So, for managers to effectively handle constructive feedback and any feedback, it really is a tool that continues to give and creates continuity in your environment. So, strategies to implement in the workplace. So, these are things that you can implement and think about as you're working and managing with teams. So, you can create a motivation framework, and that means you can implement a science-backed approach based on autonomy, mastery, and purpose, and have that be what frames how you look at motivation. You can promote psychological safety, and you could do that by ensuring open dialogue and risk taking without fear and negative consequences. So you want to champion people trying things, even if they fail, right? And if they fail, you want to have an approach to dealing with that. You want to establish recognition and reward systems, and these have to be aligned with what motivates the team members, right? So individual preferences linked to intrinsic motivation factors. So maybe survey your group and identify, are they extrinsically motivated largely, or are they intrinsically motivated? And does the reward system or recognition system that you have in place actually speak to what supercharges the employees in the environment? So goal setting that motivates. So we've all heard of SMART goal setting. It's been around for a while. Everybody seems to use that term in any environment that I walk into. Here's the thing though, it's not enough. It's just not enough. For when it comes to people, there's more going on in their mind and in their brain. And so effective goal setting is more than just setting targets. It's aligning goals with individual aspirations and organizational mission. It involves employees in goal setting processes. It breaks goals into smaller milestones and provides continuous feedback and support as you're working and laboring the goals. So if there's no feedback and support as you're executing, there's going to be a gap in the return that you get. So provide and celebrate small wins and big achievements. You want to encourage peer accountability and collaboration. You want people to talk about their goals and really understand them and be able to tell stories around them. That's how you know that they're engaged and motivated. Adjust goals as needed to remain relevant. So some goals can be very exciting at the beginning, and then towards the middle or the end, they no longer make sense, but readjustment doesn't happen. So that's a waste of resources, time, and energy, and also a lack and absence of clarity. You want to create visual reminders of the progress. So you can do this in various ways. If you have a CRM, you could set up, alerts. If you have a Slack channel, you can dedicate Slack channels to milestones or progress. If you don't have any of those things, you can do it on an Excel spreadsheet that everybody looks at. You can definitely do it through Google Apps, but you have a method that continues to stimulate that dopamine and oxytocin as you're working through goals. And then you want to encourage reflection and learning post goal completion. Lessons learned is such an important step to what we do. And if we don't do it, we don't grow fast enough as an organization and as individuals. So signs of demotivated employees. So for our managers out there, it is also part of our role and our job to identify when something is not working and then do something about it. So demotivated employees look like this, right? High absences, coming late all the time, an apathetic attitude, conflict with peers and boss, constantly stressed or bored. Boredom is a thing, it's a symptom, right? Leading negative discussions, right? Every time they bring up a point, it's negative. Every time they bring up a point, it's a pain point, right? Decreased productivity, poor quality of work, and withdrawn employees, right? Employees that don't want to participate in events, don't want to participate in anything that has to do with collaboration or teamwork or camaraderie. And people who reject new initiatives or new responsibilities or have, declined having conversations around their growth or defining their goals, that's a demotivated employee. So motivation is not a one size fit all. And so we have to remember that as managers and leaders, that every person is different. Their motivation looks different. How their mind reacts is different depending on what they're experiencing and who they are. So managers should recognize that each employee is motivated by different factors. Tailoring motivation strategies to individual needs, strengths, and aspirations creates a more engaged and productive team. So motivation killers. Another thing that's really important is our own self-awareness as managers and leaders. So we want to make sure that we understand what we do impacts how others feel, what they're experiencing, even chemically, we now know, right? And that we still need them to get to that outcome, which we've been hired to achieve. So these motivation killers look like this: micromanaging, failing to recognize and reward effort, setting unrealistic expectations, ignoring employee input, providing inconsistent or unclear feedback, overworking employees without considering well-being, showing favoritism, focusing solely on short-term results, right? If you're in a company that's rush, 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 and there's always an emergency project, you want to think about what that's doing to motivation, because you're burning people out and you're not going to have long-term results or continuity. Not providing growth opportunities. That to me looks like when I step into organizations, they don't have succession plans. Nobody could speak to what success looks like in the role. Nobody could speak to the large or high level organizational goals and how that is impacted by the role. That's a clear indicator that growth opportunities are not talked about, are not thought about, and are not planned around. Fostering a culture of blame. Everybody points fingers, right? Why something isn't happening is always somebody's fault. Neglecting to communicate the why behind decisions, right? When people say things like, that's the way it's always been done, I think that's the one statement that really gets under my skin, because that makes no sense. Why are we doing what we're doing, but we don't know why, right? I assume people are intelligent and competent and, want to provide them a little bit more than that. So here are our key takeaways for today, and we're right on time. I will open it up for any questions, comments in a minute, but here are our takeaways for today. Dopamine and oxytocin play a crucial role in motivation. It's important to determine if your team members are extrinsically or intrinsically motivated. And goal setting is most effective when it activates motivation. Using a SMART framework is not enough, right? Managers should look for signs of demotivation in their environment, and motivation strategies are most effective when they are personalized. It's important for managers to take that extra step and get to know their teams. Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and see if there are any questions. I'm going to look at our live stream on YouTube for any comments. And I'm going to look here if there are any comments or questions. Please let me know. You're free to unmute or place your question or comment in the chat box. So it looks like we're good on the live stream. Any questions in Zoom land or any comments? I'd love to hear from you, even if you want to just put a comment in the chat. Was this information helpful? Did you enjoy our Kickstarter for our webinar series? Okay, well, as we have any comments or questions come in, I'm going to go ahead and keep going. So just as an added value, we provide training resources of all kinds to managers and leaders out there. You will be receiving a copy of the webinar deck and access to the recording link. We have training programs available, tools. Our management planner is our hero item, which is has been designed by me and HR executives to help managers guide these type of interactions in the workforce. So check those out. They're available at www.managementcues.org. So please, if you have any questions, reach out. So happy to start this webinar series with you guys. I've missed you. It's been a while since we did a series, and I hope that you stay tuned for the following episodes. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. Take care. Thank you so much.